They say the world ended in cities first, places packed with people, where panic spreads faster than any virus. But out here, deep in the Cascades, we didn't see it happen. We felt it. The silence came first. The radio stopped. Then the forest changed. My name is Ethan Cole. I was a forest ranger in the Pacific Northwest. And this is how I survived the first 7 days after the world fell apart. Before the world ended, life was simple. I woke up to the same sounds I'd heard for years. The crackle of the campfire, the whisper of wind through the pines. And my partner, Marcus Reed, mumbling about how much he hated instant coffee. We'd been forest rangers here for 6 years. 2 guys keeping watch over a few hundred square miles of Oregon wilderness. It was peaceful work, long days, simple rules, and the kind of silence you start to depend on. Marcus and I couldn't have been more different. He was all instinct and adrenaline, the type to wrestle a bear if it gave him a good story. I was the opposite, cautious, patient, maybe even boring. But somehow, it worked. That morning, something felt off. The forest was too still. No bird calls, no rustling brush, just a kind of heavy quiet that pressed on your chest. The radio, which usually crackled with chatter from other towers, was nothing but static. We joked about it at first, probably a busted repeater, probably nothing. By noon, we got a call about 2 missing hikers near the northern ridge. It wasn't unusual. People got lost out there all the time. We packed up, hiked 3 miles, and found their last known campsite. The scene didn't make sense. The tents were shredded, sleeping bags ripped open, blood smeared across the ground and up the trees like something had been dragged. There were tracks in the mud, big ones, but uneven. Some looked human, others didn't. And the smell, it was like copper and rot. Marcus thought maybe it was a bear. I didn't say anything, but I'd been in these woods long enough to know bears don't walk on 2 feet. I tried the radio. Static tried again. Dead air. Not even static after that, just silence. That's when we heard it. Footsteps, slow, uneven, crunching through the brush behind us. We turned. It was a man, or something that used to be one. He stumbled out of the trees, clothes torn, face pale, eyes cloudy. His head twitched, jaw tight, body jerking like a puppet with cut strings. Marcus called out. The man didn't stop, just turned toward us and broke into a sprint. I fired once. He dropped, then got back up. That's when we ran. We tore through the woods to the truck. The forest felt alive, every branch snapping, every echo too close. I don't remember getting in the cab, just the sound of the engine roaring as we sped down the gravel road. People, or things, moved between the trees. Some staggered, others sprinted straight for the truck. Their faces, I can still see them. Some looked terrified, others hollow. The main road was blocked. Cars abandoned, smoke in the distance. I saw a child's shoe in the middle of the asphalt, covered in blood. We turned back toward the ranger station. The world behind us was on fire. That night, the screams started. We barricaded the doors, sat in the dark, and listened. Sometimes it was far away, sometimes close. Too close. The radio sputtered once before dying completely. I caught fragments. Containment failed. Portland, stay out. And then, nothing. By dawn, we made our way to the fire watchtower. 60 feet up, steel and wood, 1 ladder. It wasn't much, but it felt safe. From up there, we could see everything. The rolling fog, the endless trees, and far away, thin columns of smoke rising from what used to be towns. For a while, we just watched, trying to make sense of it. We had maybe 5 cans of food and a few bottles of water. Marcus joked about finally losing weight. I didn't laugh. At night, they came. The infected, the sick, whatever they were. They wandered below the tower, silent and slow, sometimes standing still for hours, like they were listening for something. One night, I tried using the shortwave radio to reach anyone still out there. The moment I keyed the mic, the infected below twitched, every one of them, all at once, like they could feel it. I stopped transmitting after that. By day 3, the rain started, cold, relentless. The trails below turned to mud. The forest, once green and alive, became gray and waterlogged. Marcus started to change. Not physically, not yet, but in his head. He couldn't sit still. Kept saying we had to find people, find help. I told him we'd just die faster that way. We argued. Too much. But when the night came, we sat in silence again, listening to the wind and the rain. On the 4th day, lightning struck somewhere near the ridge. By afternoon, we could see flames in the distance. The fire spread fast, too fast. The smoke rolled toward us, thick and dark. It drove the infected uphill right toward the tower. We fought through the night, shot until our rifles were hot, until our ears rang. The infected didn't stop. They didn't even scream when they burned. They just kept moving. By sunrise, the ground below was a graveyard. Marcus stared at them for a long time, then said he couldn't tell which ones were human anymore. Neither could I. Day 5 came and went. Food was almost gone. Marcus started skipping his turn on watch. Said he couldn't look anymore. On the 6th day, we saw her, a woman limping through the trees, wearing torn hiking gear. She was alive, or so we thought. Blood soaked her leg. She waved, calling for help. Marcus wanted to go down. I stopped him. The wound was bad, deep, dark, already spreading up her skin. We both knew what that meant. She fell, didn't move for a while. Then she did, slow, jerky, unnatural. When her head lifted, her eyes were gone. Marcus didn't speak after that. That night, the air was thick with ash. The sky glowed red from the fire miles away. Marcus sat near the window, scratching his arm, saying it was just a cut from the ladder. I didn't press. By morning, he was sweating, pale, trembling, his breathing shallow. I tried to convince myself it was just infection, the normal kind. But deep down, I knew better. He told me he felt cold, even with the fire going. Then he started mumbling names, places, things from home. And then he just stopped talking altogether. When he finally went still, I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long. Hours, maybe. Then he twitched. It was small. A finger. Then his jaw. His eyes opened halfway. Still human, but empty. He looked at me, tried to speak. All he said was, "You'll know when it's time." I didn't move. Couldn't. As the light faded, I heard something above the wind. A low rumble. I stepped outside and looked up. A helicopter. It was far, barely visible through the smoke. But it was there. Moving slow, heading north. I shouted, waved, fired a flare. Nothing. It just kept flying, vanishing into the haze like it was never there at all. I stood there until the sound was gone. Then I went back inside, sat next to Marcus's body, and placed the rifle between us. One bullet left. I told myself I'd decide in the morning. The 7th day came quietly. No wind, no birds, just smoke and silence. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I just sat by the window, watching the horizon through the haze. Sometimes I thought I saw movement. A figure in the distance, walking through the ash. Maybe real, maybe not. Maybe someone else survived. Or maybe it was just another one of them. I never looked down again. The forest floor was alive with the infected, swaying like the trees themselves, waiting, listening. When the first light broke through the smoke, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Warmth, weak, fragile, but real. I thought about Marcus, about the people out there who never made it this far. And for a moment, just a moment, I believed that maybe, somehow, the world wasn't over yet. Maybe there was still something left worth surviving for. I don't know what comes next, but I'm still here. For now. I never planned to write any of this down. Surgeons aren't storytellers. We record vitals, not memories. But after what happened, I need to put the facts somewhere before they disappear with the rest of the world. I was a trauma surgeon at Denver General. My days were blood, adrenaline, and paperwork. I'd seen everything: gunshots, car wrecks, overdoses. Death had rules, and I understood them, until the day it stopped following them. This isn't a hero story. It's just what I saw, what I did, and what I lost during the first 7 days, before the world remembered how fragile it really was. Hour 0 to 2. Routine noise. I'd been on call for 31 hours when it started. Denver General's trauma wing has a particular smell. Iodine, sweat, metal. It seeps into your scrubs, your skin, your thoughts. Around 5:30 a.m., the hospital quieted the way it only does right before shift change. I was dictating discharge notes for a gunshot patient when the news feed in the break room showed a red ticker. Unprovoked violent attacks reported in Colorado Springs, Boulder, and Pueblo. Police cite possible designer drug use. We laughed. Someone said, bath salts again. Someone else added, or TikTok. That's how denial sounds. Casual, tired, and half awake. I sterilized my instruments. My hands moved on muscle memory. Check clamps, rinse forceps, fold drape corners tight. My head was already at home, imagining my wife, Laura, and our son, Evan, getting ready for school. I hadn't seen them awake in 2 days. Then, the trauma pager went off. 3 inbound, the dispatcher said. Multiple victims from a bus crash on I-70, possible bites. Bites? I repeated. Affirmative. Severe bleeding, agitated. The paramedics came through the sliding doors 10 minutes later. I remember the first patient, a middle-aged man, shirt shredded, eyes wide and unfocused. He kept muttering, "Don't let her touch me." His pulse was thready, blood pressure collapsing. The second was a woman, maybe late 20s, covered in blood not entirely her own. The third didn't make it through the door. He flatlined in the ambulance bay. We worked the first 2 simultaneously. Nurse Daniels cut away clothing. I inserted a large-bore IV into the man's left antecubital, fluids running wide open. The wounds looked human, ragged crescents, deep tissue missing. You don't mistake a human bite for anything else. The spacing of the incisors, the crush of tissue. It's diagnostic. Rabies, Daniels whispered. Not that fast, I said. Get me tetanus and broad-spectrum antibiotics. The woman started convulsing on the next gurney. Her heart rate shot past 180. We sedated, restrained, intubated. None of it helped. Then she stopped moving. Flatline. I stepped back, sweat soaking my collar. Time of death, 6:51. And then she sat up. No pulse, no respiration. Eyes open, pupils blown wide like oil slicks. The restraint snapped taut. The resident screamed. I didn't think. I grabbed her shoulders, tried to push her back down, shouting for security. She turned her head toward me and, God help me, she bit the air, teeth clacking centimeters from my wrist. Security tased her. Nothing. Then one of them drove a metal oxygen tank into her skull. That worked. For 5 seconds, the trauma bay was silent, except for the cardiac monitor screaming a continuous tone. Daniels whispered, "What the hell was that?" No one answered. By mid-morning, every ER in Denver was overrun. Calls came through the radio, paramedics screaming, "They're biting us. Get doors locked." And then static. Hospital security sealed the entrances, but people kept pounding on the glass. Families, police, one kid in a blood-soaked hoodie begging us to help his mother, who had collapsed but won't die. We were trained for everything from mass shootings to bioterror drills. But nothing prepared us for watching a patient die twice. At 9:42 a.m., Nurse Daniels, still pale, shaking, tried to calm an elderly man who'd been bitten on the arm. He coded during a blood draw. She turned away to call me, and he lunged, biting deep into her neck. Her scream cut through the entire ward. I pressed gauze against her wound, trying to compress the arterial spray. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "Mike," she gasped, "don't let me." She didn't finish the sentence. She went limp. I kept pressure on the wound long after I knew it was useless. When she came back, 10 minutes later, I wasn't there. I'd locked myself in the supply room. For the next 30 minutes, I listened to the chaos outside. The pounding, the screams, the metallic crash of rolling beds hitting walls. Something heavy slammed against the doors, once, twice, then went still. I took inventory. 2 duffel bags. I filled them. 4 saline, morphine, antibiotics, suture kits, gloves, bandages, surgical scissors, a portable defibrillator. Not because I thought I could fix this, because preparation gave me something to hold on to. The PA system crackled. "All personnel, evacuate immediately. National Guard has been..." Static. That's when the lights flickered out. Emergency generators kicked in, humming weakly. The corridors looked different under red emergency lighting, longer, darker, smeared with shadow. I stepped out, duffel over my shoulder, scalpel in hand. The air smelled of blood and ozone. Bodies littered the floor. Some moved. The trauma ward, my ward, was gone. What replaced it was primal. Nurses crouched over patients, tearing into them. Security guards firing sidearms down the hallway. The sound was like popcorn. Short, dry bursts. One of the paramedics, Jason, stumbled out of a room, clutching his abdomen. "Doc, help me." His uniform was soaked in blood. He'd been bitten across the ribs. "I can stop the bleeding," I said automatically. He shook his head. "Don't waste it." "They don't die, Mike." He pressed a pistol into my hand. "1 round left." I hesitated. "You'll need it more than me," he said, then turned and limped toward the stairwell. I heard a single shot a moment later. That's when I stopped being a doctor and started being something else. I made it to the ambulance bay by crawling along the wall, using gurneys for cover. The automatic doors were shattered. A cold wind carried the smell of exhaust and burning rubber. I stepped over 3 bodies, one of them a child. My gloves were slick, the duffel heavy on my back. I spotted my Jeep, black Wrangler Rubicon, lifted, winch on the front bumper. I'd always called it overkill. Now it was salvation. I sprinted. Something grabbed my ankle. I kicked free, slammed into the driver's seat, and gunned the engine. A shape hit the windshield. Bloody face, empty eyes. I floored it, shattering glass, and drove straight through the chaos. Tires crunching over things I didn't look at. When I cleared the hospital gate, the city skyline was on fire. Hour 12 to 24, survival instinct. I don't remember most of the drive. Shock does that. Turns the world into snapshots instead of film. One moment I was weaving through wrecked cars on Colfax Avenue. The next, I was staring at a man standing in the middle of the highway, his clothes torn, hands red up to the elbows. He didn't move when I hit the horn, didn't even blink, just watched me through the cracked glass. I swerved into the median and gunned it over the grass. The Rubicon suspension bucked hard. I clipped a mailbox and kept going. My hands shook so badly I almost couldn't shift. Every few miles, I stopped to help when I could. Habit, I guess. Training. On a side road near Golden, I found a minivan with a hood up and a woman waving a bloody towel. 2 kids were crying in the back. Her husband lay on the pavement, pale and sweating. He'd been bitten on the shoulder, deep, jagged, necrotic tissue already turning gray around the edges. "Doctor?" she asked when she saw my badge. Her voice cracked on the word. I examined the wound. The tissue necrosis was spreading faster than anything bacterial I'd ever seen. Clotting was non-existent. No fever, just hypoxia, tremors, and a slowing pulse. He was dying, but not the normal kind. "We can clean it," she said. "You can stitch it, right?" I looked at her kids. They were maybe 7 and 10, the same age as Evan. "I can stop the bleeding," I said, "but it won't stop this." She didn't understand, or maybe refused to. Denial is stronger than morphine. I gave him morphine anyway, heavy dose, enough to ease it. I told her to hold his hand to keep the kids back. When he stopped breathing, I waited 3 minutes, then pulled her gently away. She screamed when he moved again. I left before I could see what happened next. The guilt came later. The logic came first. Save who you can. Day 2, home. I reached our house in the foothills just after dawn. The sky was streaked orange, ash drifting like snow. The power grid was down, cell service long gone. The front door was barricaded from the inside. That was a good sign. "Laura," I called. "It's me, Mike." There was movement behind the curtains. The door opened a crack. A shotgun barrel appeared first. She was trembling when she saw me. "Jesus Christ, Mike," I thought. "I know." We hugged, hard enough that it hurt. Evan came running down the stairs in his pajamas, hair sticking up in all directions. He slammed into me, arms around my waist. I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding in until that moment. We spent the next few hours checking the house. She'd done everything right. Filled the bathtub, sealed the windows, stocked food and water. Laura was a planner. She used to joke that she married me because surgeons always think in contingencies. That night, while Evan slept, we sat in the dark listening to the radio. The emergency broadcast kept looping. "Stay indoors. Avoid contact with infected individuals. The condition is transmitted through bites or exchange of bodily fluids. Do not attempt to aid the infected." Laura stared at the radio like it was lying to her. "They can't just give up on people. They're not people anymore," I said quietly. She looked at me then, not like a husband, but like someone she didn't quite recognize. Day 3 and 4, adaptation. By the 3rd day, the city lights were gone. Denver was a silent black silhouette on the horizon, occasionally flickering orange from fires. We packed the Jeep at dawn, non-perishables, meds, water, camping gear. Laura insisted we bring Evan's stuffed fox. I didn't argue. Drove west, up into the Rockies, toward the old cabin we used on weekends. It wasn't much, a single-room structure near a lake, but it was defensible, remote, off every main road. The drive took 6 hours through back roads. We passed overturned trucks, burned out cars, a few bodies. No survivors. When we arrived, the air was colder, cleaner. The forest felt untouched, almost cruelly peaceful. I took inventory again: medical kits, antibiotics, gauze, alcohol pads, one firearm with limited ammunition, a field surgical kit from the hospital, enough morphine to ease pain, but not enough to save anyone who got bit. Laura asked what I'd do if one of us was bitten. I didn't answer. That night, I started journaling. Symptom progression, incubation estimates, observed behavior. It gave me something to control. Science as therapy. Based on what I'd seen, reanimation occurred within 3 to 10 minutes post-mortem, depending on blood loss and temperature. No neural activity, pure motor reflex. No higher function, just hunger. I wrote, "They're not undead. They're hijacked. A perfect storm of virology and nightmare." Day 5, rationing and routine. We fell into a rhythm. Mornings, collect water from the lake, boil and filter. Afternoons, check perimeter, reinforce doors. Evenings, radio updates, less frequent now, more static. Evan handled it better than I expected. Kids adapt faster. He started calling our Jeep the Beast. Said it was our escape pod. I taught him how to change a tire, how to listen for the click of a loaded chamber without touching the trigger. Laura avoided talking about the hospital or the city or the future. I understood. Some truths are too raw to share. At night, when Evan was asleep, I'd sit outside and listen. Sometimes, far off, you could hear them. That wet, dragging shuffle. Low moans carried by the wind. Once, I saw movement near the tree line, a figure stumbling through the dark. I stayed still until it passed. My hand still shook when I held a scalpel. Not from fear, but from memory. Day 6, contact. Around midday, a voice crackled through the radio. Faint, male, strained. Medical personnel, if anyone can hear this. Establishing safe zone. Colorado Springs Air Base. We have... Static. Laura wanted to go. It's the military, Mike. They'll have food, protection. I stared at the map. The route ran through half-collapsed highways and suburbs crawling with infected. It's not a safe zone, I said. It's a target. She didn't argue, but I saw the hope die in her eyes. That night, Evan asked, "Are the bad people sick forever?" I told him, "Yeah, buddy." For a while, he thought about that. Then we just wait till it's over. I didn't have the heart to tell him it might never be. Day 7, still human. Snow fell overnight, thin, soft flakes drifting over the cabin roof. The world looked cleaner than it deserved to. The fire crackled. For a moment, it felt almost normal. I held Evan close while he slept. Laura sat by the window, shotgun across her lap, watching the snow. I opened my journal and wrote, Day 7, still breathing, still human. The world we knew was gone, no hospitals, no laws, no order. But the instinct to heal, to protect, to endure. That's harder to kill than flesh. Outside, the snow muffled everything, even the distant sounds of the dead. For the first time in a week, I let myself believe we might make it to day 8. My name is Daniel Reyes. For 7 years, I watched Seattle through cameras. 1,000 unblinking eyes wired into every street, bridge, and alley. I used to think it made me safe, knowing what was out there before anyone else did. Turns out, it just meant I was the first to see it all fall apart. When the outbreak began, I was sitting underground, surrounded by screens, watching the city eat itself pixel by pixel. I didn't fire a gun. I didn't save anyone. I just watched. This is what I saw. the first 7 days. Day 1. Routine. Night shifts were my quiet addiction. The city surveillance command center sat 10 floors underground, buried beneath the Seattle Municipal Complex like a nerve ending no one remembered existed. 56 monitors blinked across the wall, painting the room in cold blue. Each screen was a small heartbeat of the city. Crosswalks, bridges, alleys, the glittering arteries of Pike Place and Capitol Hill. I lived in those pixels. The hum of the air system, the low hiss of static, the smell of burnt coffee. They became my soundtrack. Outside, rain whispered against the concrete ventilation shafts. Inside, the only motion came from the slow pan of security cameras following cars through the drizzle. I sipped coffee gone stale 2 hours ago and logged another maintenance note. Camera 17, frame jitter, probable lens condensation. Routine, always routine. The police scanner crackled. Unit 24 responding. Possible assault outside Harborview. Subject appears disoriented. Violent, I barely looked up. Seattle always had disoriented people. Lena strolled in 15 minutes late. Scarf soaked, eyeliner smudged. She tossed me a protein bar. Still awake, Reyes? You look like death before the coffee company policy, I said. We monitor until we become the ghosts ourselves. She laughed, sat, and started her feed rotations. Around 2 a.m., another report came through. Multiple assaults downtown, victims biting responders. The word biting made me pause, hand hovering over the mic. Probably drugs? Lena said without looking up. Remember last year's bath salt panic? I nodded, but left the scanner volume higher than usual. The monitors kept humming, the rain kept falling, and somewhere out there something new had already begun. Day 2, disturbance. It started as motion alerts. 4:23 a.m., hospital parking lot. A man staggering between cars, half naked, covered in blood. 4:26, and another near the bus terminal. 4:30, same movement pattern. Slow, erratic, like sleepwalkers underwater. I switched to manual control, zoomed in on the first feed. The man's mouth was open, jaw trembling as if chewing. His hands twitched. There was someone lying at his feet. Lena, I said quietly, come here. She rolled over, chewing her bar. Another drunk? Just watch. We stared as he knelt beside the body and, God, I thought the feed had glitched. Bit down. He tore at the flesh like it was food. Lena gagged. Tell me that's not real. I hit record, tagging the footage for the SPD data line. On another monitor, blue lights approached. 3 officers surrounded the man, shouting commands. He didn't respond. One cop fired a taser. The body convulsed, fell, then, seconds later, rose again, wires still attached. Static. All 3 body cams cut out. We sat there surrounded by the low hum of 100 screens, frozen. The radio crackled again. Harborview lockdown initiated. Reports of mass aggression. All units. Containment protocols. Containment. That word didn't belong on a police channel. Lena rubbed her temples. Maybe it's some infection. Rabies? PCP? I didn't answer. My reflection in the monitor looked ghostly in the flicker. One tired man watching a city unravel pixel by pixel. Day 3, collapse on screen. By dawn, it wasn't isolated anymore. Every feed told the same story. Crowds running, cars crashing, people tearing each other apart under the sodium lights. Downtown went first, then the docks. Cameras started dying one after another, feeds dissolving into black snow. At 9 a.m., our supervisor ordered a lockdown. Only skeleton staff remained. Phones kept ringing upstairs until they stopped altogether. Lena sat cross-legged on her chair, scrolling social media. "They're saying it's viral," she muttered. "Something spreading through bites. People dying, coming back. It's trending under hashtag Seattle Nightmare." I stared at her screen. Live videos flooded in until the network throttled and every clip turned into spinning buffers. Then nothing. On the monitors, fires bloomed across the city. Orange flowers opening in the dark. Sirens wailed, then faded. The last clear feed showed a line of buses at Union Station packed with civilians. The camera trembled as someone slammed into it from behind, smearing blood across the lens before it went black. Lena whispered, "We should go." "Where?" "Home. Anywhere but here. If it's in the streets, home won't help." She slammed her fist on the console. "So what? We just watch." That word hit harder than I expected. I'd spent years watching accidents, crimes, people at their worst, always from a safe, sterile distance. But that night, the barrier between screen and skin felt paper thin. By midnight, the backup generators hummed louder. The building shuddered once, maybe an explosion somewhere nearby. Lena paced. I stayed glued to the last functioning camera, overlooking Fifth Avenue, where a single ambulance burned while shadows moved inside the smoke. When she finally slept on the floor, I kept watching. I couldn't stop. Day 4, leaving the screens. The power died just before dawn. The sudden silence was deafening. No static, no hum, just the drip of rain through the vents. Lena woke with a start. "What happened?" "Generators out." I tried the radio. Static. The emergency lights flickered once and went dark. In the pale glow from my phone, I saw the walls differently. Gray concrete, cables like veins. The room smelled of dust and burnt wiring. "We can't stay," I said. Lena hesitated, then nodded. We scavenged flashlights, batteries, water bottles, whatever we could cram into a maintenance pack. I pulled a handful of flash drives from the server rack, automatic reflex. Evidence of what we'd seen, maybe proof that it started here, in real time. When we pushed open the exit hatch, cold air rushed in. The city above was quiet in the wrong way. No traffic, no distant music, just wind through empty streets. Smoke curled from downtown. The skyline flickered where fires reflected off low clouds. Lena whispered, "It's like someone pressed pause." We moved through alleys I'd memorized from years of camera feeds. The blind spots, the service tunnels, the stairwells no one used. Each corner looked smaller, heavier, realer than it ever had on screen. Halfway down 3rd Avenue, a siren wailed and cut short. Somewhere a single gunshot echoed, then silence again. By nightfall, we reached an abandoned parking garage. We ate protein bars by flashlight, no words left between us. When I woke in the middle of the night, Lena was gone. Just her scarf left behind, fluttering in the draft. Day 5, the empty city. The city felt like it had exhaled its last breath. I moved through it alone, guided by the ghost map in my head, camera angles, motion sensors, maintenance routes. Streets I'd only known through lenses unfolded before me in ruin. Near Pioneer Square, an overturned ambulance blocked the intersection. The back doors hung open, blood streaking the interior. I caught my reflection in the glass, unshaven, eyes red, a stranger. I found a working handheld recorder in the glove compartment and started logging notes. Day 5, downtown grid compromised, no power, estimated 80% camera failure. Civilian presence, minimal talking helped. It filled the silence. Inside a convenience store, shelves were stripped bare except for cleaning supplies. I pocketed a bottle of alcohol and a handful of batteries. The smell of rot came from the freezer section, I didn't check why. Every block told the same story. Doors barricaded, cars abandoned mid-turn, posters fluttering from lampposts. City evacuation route, E5 corridor. I passed a child's bicycle lying in the street, one wheel spinning lazily in the wind. That night, I camped inside the security lobby of a high-rise. The monitors there were blank, but I still turned toward them like old habits. The silence buzzed louder than static ever had. Day 6, contact. I heard voices before I saw them, whispers beneath the city, echoing through a maintenance tunnel near the waterfront. I raised my flashlight. 3 figures flinched in the beam. A man, a woman, a teenager clutching a wrench. They were gaunt, filthy, eyes sharp. "Easy," I said, lowering the light. "I'm not infected." The man stepped forward. "Name?" "Daniel Reyes." His face changed. "The camera guy?" That startled me. "How do you know that?" "We saw you," the woman said, "before everything went dark." "You were on the public feed, the operator talking to dispatch. You watched us at the shelter when they stopped letting people in." My stomach turned. I tried to get help sent." The man snorted. "Yeah?" Didn't work. Silence stretched. Then the teenager spoke. "You can fix generators, right?" "I can try." They led me into a maintenance room lit by a single camping lantern. The generator sat in pieces. I recognized the model from city infrastructure schematics. After 20 minutes of work, fuel line, spark plug, reset, the engine coughed to life, flooding the tunnel with warm, yellow light. The woman smiled for the first time. Guess the Watcher's good for something after all. We shared canned soup, more water than I'd had in days. They told me about barricades failing, about the military pulling back south. The infection moved faster than anyone could map. That night, as we took turns on watch, the man, Marcus, asked, "Why'd you stay watching so long?" When it started. "Because if I stopped," I said, "it became real." He nodded like he understood. Day 7. The new Watcher. By morning, the group decided to move north toward the University District. I told them I'd stay behind, just for a while. I needed height, perspective. I climbed the maintenance ladder up through a service hatch that opened onto a nearby office tower. From the roof, the city stretched silent and gray beneath a veil of smoke. The sound reflected dull sunlight like spilled mercury. In one corner of the roof, I found a portable monitor wired to a surviving street cam uplink, the last heartbeat of the surveillance network. I hooked my recorder into it, rewired a battery, and after a few sputters, the screen came alive. Camera 12B, Broadway and Pine. The feed was grainy, flickering, but it showed the intersection where I used to watch morning traffic. Now only a single figure moved across it. A man dragging a suitcase, slow and limping, vanishing into the fog. I set the monitor on a crate and sat beside it. The static hum returned, soft and steady like an old friend. I opened my logbook. Day 7. Seattle quiet. Survivors moving north. Network reduced to one operational feed. I used to watch over the city. Now I just watch for life. The wind picked up, carrying the faint echo of sirens from somewhere far away. Maybe memory, maybe real. I looked at the screen until the light faded, until the hum filled the world again, until the city became nothing but shadows in motion. My name is Jean Cauvage. I was a mechanical engineer, one of those men who trusted machines more than people. At the factory by the Vltava, everything made sense. Pressure, torque, heat. Problems had solutions. When the world began to fail, it sounded like one of our old engines, a slow rattle, then silence. I thought I could fix it. I was wrong. Day 1. The noise of the machines. The air in the factory was already thick before sunrise, hot, oily, metallic. We called it the iron fog. It rose from the hydraulic presses like breath from the sleeping beasts. I clocked in just as I had for 15 years, the smell of coolant and burnt steel following me like a shadow. The morning shift started with the usual rhythm: the clatter of gears, the hiss of compressed air, the steady pulse of the conveyor belts. I loved that rhythm. It was predictable, mechanical, almost comforting. You could lose yourself in it and forget the world outside the gates. I was tightening a bolt on one of the old Škoda presses when Marek, one of the younger machinists, slumped to the floor beside me. At first, I thought he'd slipped on the oil. But then I saw the tremor in his hands, the way his jaw locked and his eyes rolled back. We called for the medic. She came running from the office with her first aid kit, the red cross faded and cracked. Heat stroke, someone said. He didn't eat breakfast. But I'd never seen a man shake like that. His skin was gray, almost metallic in the harsh fluorescent light. They carried him out on a stretcher. The shift manager told us to get back to work. Machines don't stop for one sick man. By evening, I was alone in the tool room, calibrating the bearings on the cutting line. Outside, through the cracked windows, I heard sirens echoing from across the Vltava. Not the usual ambulance wail, longer, broken tones. Civil defense sirens, the kind I hadn't heard since childhood drills. The machines hummed on, steady and deafening. But beneath that industrial roar, there was something else, a distant, growing panic. That night, when I left the factory, the city smelled of smoke. Day 2, quarantine. When I arrived the next morning, the gates were locked from the outside. 2 soldiers stood by the entrance, rifles slung low, their faces hidden behind respirators. They wouldn't let anyone leave or enter. Temporary quarantine, one said. His check clipped official. There's been a chemical incident. Stay inside until further notice. Chemical. That word hung in the air like a gas leak. Inside the factory, the noise was quieter than usual. Management gathered us in the cafeteria, maybe 40 of us left. No one knew anything. Phones had stopped working. The radio played emergency bulletins every hour. Violent illness spreading in parts of Prague. Avoid contact with symptomatic individuals. From the 2nd floor, I watched through a broken window. Across the river, in Smichov, I could see smoke plumes rising between the rooftops. Someone said they saw helicopters over Letna. Someone else said it was all fake, a government drill. But that night, as we stood on the upper catwalk, we saw the fires for ourselves. The city was burning in pockets, like small, deliberate wounds. The machines had been shut off by order of the foreman. The silence was unbearable. I never realized how much I depended on that mechanical heartbeat. Now, with the motors cold, you could hear everything. The dripping pipes, the echo of footsteps, the river outside, whispering against the quay. We slept in the locker room, surrounded by the ghosts of our own routines, helmets hung in rows, boots neatly lined up, as if waiting for their owners to return. Somewhere beyond the walls, Prague screamed. Day 3, the first attack. The night guard disappeared during his rounds. His flashlight was found near the boiler room, still on, its beam cutting a perfect white circle across the floor. No blood, no struggle, just gone. We split into groups to search. I took the west corridor near the assembly hall. Long shadows, half lit by flickering bulbs. The air smelled of rust and ozone. I could hear the distant creak of metal expanding as the temperature dropped. That's when I heard the pounding. Heavy, irregular, like someone slamming a wrench against the steel doors of the loading dock. I froze. The others shouted from the far end, but the noise drowned them out. Then came the screaming. 2 voices, then 1. By the time I reached them, one of the machinists, Pavel, was on the ground, thrashing, blood on his neck. Over him was another man, or what used to be one, his skin blistered, mouth black with dried blood, eyes white, empty. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a welding torch. The hiss of the gas felt like a weapon in my hands. When I pulled the trigger, the blue flame roared to life. I swung it toward the thing, and the smell of burning flesh filled the air. We dragged what was left of the infected man into the maintenance pit. The others wanted to burn him. I agreed. By dawn, we'd sealed off the eastern wing with sheet metal and welding seams. I welded the last joint myself, sparks lighting the corridor like a storm of fireflies. The others watched in silence. I realized then that my knowledge, my years of repairing dead machines, was suddenly worth something again. But I also knew what that meant. Every failure, every broken part, would now be my responsibility. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "We built walls of steel to keep out what we don't understand. But what if it's already inside?" Day 4, silence. No power. The factory finally went dark sometime before dawn. The emergency lights flickered once, then died. What was left was the slow ticking of cooling metal. I spent the morning inspecting the generator lines. Most of the cables were waterlogged. The backup diesel tank was half empty. I tried to repair a fuse box using scavenged copper wire and a screwdriver with a cracked handle. It was pointless, but it kept my hands busy. Without the hum of machines, the building felt cavernous, every sound multiplied. My own footsteps echoed like hammer blows. Somewhere, a pipe dripped steadily into a puddle. The rhythm was almost comforting, a metronome for the end of the world. I found food in the cafeteria, a few cans of beans, some instant coffee. We boiled water over a portable burner from the maintenance room. The flame sputtered, weak and uneven. There were only 5 of us left by evening. No one spoke much. The air was thick with the smell of oil and fear. I kept thinking about my wife, Clara, and our daughter, Annetta. They lived in Zhizkov, across town. The phones were dead, and the roads were blocked. Every time I looked toward the river, I imagined their apartment windows glowing in the distance, or shattered, dark. Before sleeping, I walked the perimeter of the factory. The gates were twisted where someone had tried to break in. Dried blood on the metal. No bodies. The silence was worse than the noise. When machines are alive, they drown out the questions. When they die, you start to hear yourself think. Day 5, the bridge. I left before midnight. The others wanted to stay, said the factory was safe, but I couldn't stand the stillness anymore. I packed my notebook, a flashlight, a wrench, and a small canister of fuel. My boots echoed down the empty hall like the last beats of a dying engine. Outside, the air was cold, sharp with the smell of ash. The sky over Prague was an orange haze, lit by fires that refused to die. I made my way along the river, keeping close to the walls, passing warehouses and rail lines. The city that once sang with trams and chatter now whispered like a graveyard. When I reached the Palacky Bridge, I stopped. A tram was stuck midway across, its pantograph torn from the wires, its windows shattered. Smoke curled from its interior. The metal still glowed faintly red from the fire. The Vltava reflected it, like molten glass. I crossed carefully, boots clanging against the rails. Every step echoed. The river below looked calm, too calm. Then I heard it, a faint tolling. Church bells somewhere upstream, slow, deliberate. Each note carried through the smoke like a heartbeat. As I reached the far side, movement caught my eye, silhouettes in the fog. Not soldiers, not survivors. They moved wrong, too fast, too erratic. One stumbled, fell, rose again. I slipped into the shadows of a tram depot, breath frozen in my throat. Inside, the smell was familiar, oil, dust, metal. It was almost comforting, like home. But the comfort didn't last long. From the darkness, a voice whispered, "Don't move." Day 6, the workshop refuge. There were 2 of them. The man was about my age, wearing a mechanic's coverall with the name David stitched on the chest. The girl, early 20s maybe, had grease on her hands and fear in her eyes. They'd been hiding in the depot since the first week, living off vending machines and rainwater. When they realized I wasn't infected, they lowered their weapons, a metal rod and a crowbar. We shared what little food we had. The girl's name was Aliska. She used to study architecture. She told me the bridges were being blown up to contain the outbreak. I didn't believe her until I heard distant explosions echoing down the river. David had been trying to repair an old tram generator to keep the lights running. He showed me his setup. Wires twisted together, a fuel line dripping into a rusted engine. It was a disaster waiting to happen. So I helped. We spent the day scavenging copper coils and battery cells from the maintenance shed. I rigged the tram's old dynamo to a makeshift flywheel, using belts from the ventilation system. When we finally started it, the machine shuddered to life. Loud, uneven, but alive. For the first time in days, there was light. It filled the depot in a pale yellow glow, illuminating the dust, the graffiti, the faces of 2 strangers who, for a brief moment, looked almost human again. We built barricades that night. Welded steel frames, layered with scrap metal. I showed them how to reinforce the doors using parts from a derailed tram. The clang of hammers echoed through the hall like distant thunder. Later, as we sat in the dim light of the generator, Aliska asked, "Do you think it will ever come back? The city? The people?" I thought of the factory, of the machines waiting in silence. "No," I said quietly, "but maybe something else will." Day 7, the last spark. I woke before dawn. The generator had died sometime during the night. Fuel line clogged. The depot was cold again, the silence heavy. I told them I needed to return to the factory. David tried to stop me, said it was suicide. But I couldn't leave it like that. The machines, the blueprints, everything I'd built. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe I just needed closure. The city was quieter than before. The fires had burned down to embers. Smoke hung low over the river. As I walked, I passed the burned tram on the bridge, now nothing but a shell. The wind whistled through its frame, making it sing a hollow tune. When I reached the factory gates, the metal I'd welded days ago was still holding. Inside, the air was cold and damp. My footsteps stirred dust from the floor. In the control room, everything was as I'd left it. The gauges dead, the panels dark. I set down the canister of fuel and began to work. It took 3 hours to restore the line. I bypassed the corroded circuits, replaced the fuse with copper wire stripped from the lighting grid, and primed the generator manually. When I pulled the lever, the machine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. One by one, the lights in the main hall flickered on, dim at first, then brighter, filling the space with a pale industrial glow. The shadows retreated. For a moment, it was as if nothing had happened. The factory was alive again. Every pipe, every gear, every bolt breathing in rhythm. I could almost hear the voices of the workers, their laughter, the hum of 1,000 machines in harmony. I stood there, surrounded by the ghosts of my own creation, and felt both proud and hollow. Outside, the sun was rising over the river. The city was still burning, but softer now, the smoke blending with the light. I knew I couldn't stay. I took one last look at the glowing workshop, then shut the generator down. The sound faded into silence, leaving only the distant drip of water and the creak of settling metal. As I walked away, I wrote the final line in my notebook. We built these machines to last forever. We were wrong. But maybe, just maybe, they'll outlive us anyway. The station sits alone between the highway's two failing arteries. Neon hums like an insect pinned alive. The glass door sticks when I pull it open, a half-second delay before the night folds around me again. It's always colder near the refrigerators, as if the hum of their motors keeps something at bay. Shift started at 6. A moth the color of nicotine flutters against the fluorescent light. I sweep the same square of floor over and over, not because it's dirty, but because it gives the hours shape. The radio behind the counter hisses, then voices merge, stutter, fade. Every station sounds underwater tonight. Outside, the sky's gone flat, heavy with distance. The pumps click sometimes without reason. Once, around 8, a black truck slowed down, but never stopped. Headlights stretched my shadow into a long, nervous thread, then folded it back into me as it drove off. A man came in before midnight. No coat, no sound when he walked. His eyes had the wrong kind of focus, like he was reading a word behind me. He bought nothing, just stood near the window looking at the road that went nowhere. When he finally left, he didn't use the door. I found the latch still locked. I kept sweeping. The power flickered around 1. The freezers coughed, the lights dimmed to the color of old teeth. The generator out back caught once, failed twice, then gave in with a low animal groan. The silence that followed had layers, machines cooling, glass adjusting, something else beneath it all, like breathing slowed down to geologic time. I lit the kerosene lamp. Its flame threw a heartbeat onto the walls. There was movement outside the windows, not quick, not slow, steady, like tide. The first one came from the ditch, dragging a leg, half of its face missing as if it had been erased by heat. The skin around its mouth looked stretched, tired. It leaned into the glass, leaving a smear that fogged when it exhaled. I didn't move. The lamp's light caught the grease film on the window and turned the reflection into another version of me, watching. Behind that reflection, others gathered. The door rattled, soft but insistent. There's a key under the counter for the back storage, but the lock's been stiff for months. I forced it, shoulder against metal, until it gave. Inside, shelves of oil, coolant, batteries, boxes of snack food going stale. The smell of rubber and dust and loneliness. I pulled down the shutter, left a slit to see through. The lamp's glow caught on the cans, red, gold, silver, small planets in their own orbits. My breath condensed in the still air. Outside, something brushed the side wall, a wet, dragging sound that found a rhythm after a while, like someone mopping. I tried not to listen, but the rhythm crept under my ribs. The radio flared back alive for a few seconds. A voice listing towns, then a scream that sounded like static pretending to be human. When it cut off again, the silence felt full of memory. Around 3, the station lights came on without power. Every bulb bright, too bright, buzzing at a pitch that made my teeth ache. I went out from the storage room, expecting the dead, or whatever they were, but found no one. The windows were clean, no smears, no marks. Even the floor looked untouched, as if the night had been rewritten. I sat behind the counter, lamp still burning so the room no longer needed it. The digital clock blinked zeros. I tried to count the seconds between each flicker and lost track. My hands smelled of metal and kerosene. Through the glass, the pumps gleamed like monuments. The air shimmered above them, faintly as though heat were rising, but it was cold enough to see my breath. Then, something at the edge of the lot. A figure crawling, one arm missing, moving with a kind of logic that wasn't physical. Each lurch forward came with a delay, a pause that didn't belong to time. I watched it reach the light. Its face, if that's what it was, had collapsed inward, mouth where the eyes should be, teeth visible but useless. It pressed its head to the concrete and stayed there. From it came a sound like wind through a flute, long and uncertain. By 5, the lamps dimmed again. The glow from the horizon was red now, but not the kind of red that comes from the sun. The pumps had stopped humming. They looked empty, like the veins of a dead thing. A bus rolled past. Lights off, windows cracked open. Figures inside, motionless, faces turned outward. One hand slapped the glass, leaving a pattern that looked like frost. The bus didn't slow down. The smell changed. Not rot exactly, but something close. Meat that has forgotten its purpose. I checked the back again. One of the shelves had fallen, cans spilled like small echoes. I picked one up. Chili. The label peeled off in my fingers. Beneath the paper, the metal was warm. I put it back. When I looked again through the shutter slit, dawn had almost arrived. The light didn't soften anything. The fields around the station shimmered like the surface of oil. Things moved there in slow undulations, like bodies trying to remember gravity. I must have slept or lost the thread of hours. I woke to the sound of dripping, steady, measured. The ceiling had formed a stain above the counter, water bleeding from a place it shouldn't. The smell of it made my eyes burn. A child's voice came from the intercom, repeating the same 3 words in a loop. Pump 4 ready. There hadn't been fuel in Pump 4 for months. I turned the speaker off, but the voice continued from somewhere else, behind the freezer, under the floor, inside my mouth. The world outside was shifting in tone, too bright, too thin. The things in the field were closer now, but they weren't coming toward the building anymore. They were circling, heads tilted upward, as if listening. The reflection in the window no longer matched me. Its lips moved when mine didn't. I watched it whisper something, the sound trapped on the wrong side of the glass. For a moment, I thought it said my name, but there was no certainty left in language. The air pressure dropped, my ears popped. The sky blinked, literally blinked, one vast, slow contraction of color. Everything stilled. When motion returned, it came all at once. The pumps flared white, spewing light instead of fuel. The sound it made was like a pulse magnified. Every bulb in the ceiling burst in sequence, showering fine dust, not glass. Through that falling haze, I saw them approach again, hundreds this time, their outlines vibrating like film burned in the projector. No faces, no noise but that rhythmic wet sound. And the lamp flickering, flickering, until the whole room breathed with it. I stayed behind the counter. I didn't hide. The door began to bend inward, soft like clay. A hand, gray, small, childlike, pushed through, fingers sinking into the material. The hand opened, closed, then stilled as if uncertain it had found the right world. Then, stillness again. The horizon peeled open, a seam of white, so bright it erased the gas station sign, the pumps, the fields, everything except the counter and the lamp. The lamp went out. The white became sound, or maybe I did. The reflection in the window smiled, my teeth, but not my intention. When the light receded, morning had come, quiet and unconvincing. The pumps were gone, the road too, just gravel, endless. The cash register clicked open on its own. Inside, teeth, small and clean. I touched one. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat. I can still hear the generator breathing under the floor, though it hasn't worked in years. I think it's counting now.